Hello everyone and welcome to YouTube. I'm still not fully used to streaming a lot on YouTube, but today we will be talking about, analyzing your chess games and why it is the true secret to improving your chess. A lot of people discard this as something that's boring and tedious and you just want to play. You don't really want to care or think about the mistake because you're like, you know what? I know what I did wrong. I'm never going to make that mistake again. But truly what you think the mistake is probably not even half the issue. So that is what we're going to take a look at today. I have taken two games from the Stone Ages, not really the Stone Ages. It's probably 1900s, late 1800s. And then, of course, one of my games that I played in the late 1700s. Obviously. And I even wanted to, if we do have time at the end, I will play a game, run you through my thought process, and we will then analyze that game. Hopefully it will be a pleasant game to analyze. And just the thought of knowing that I'm going to analyze it, of course, I want to play quality chess. We're not only going to focus on the result, but the quality of our games. You can win a game, and probably the games that you win are the ones you don't really think you need to analyze, but those are the ones as well that we tend to discard, and it's maybe because our opponent just made more mistakes than we did. But even with a game that we win, we often make mistakes anyway, and unless we are Magnus Carlsen or 2800s, I mean, even the likes of the 2700 club make mistakes all the time. And someone such as myself, who is a mere 1800, you can imagine how many errors I make in my play. But good to see everyone here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the stream. And if you're not here live, I hope you enjoy the VOD. At some points, I will stop and you can pause the video. Unfortunately, those watching live won't have that much time to think if you're wanting to continue watching live. You can pause the video and at certain moments you can guess the move. So let's begin, and I'm going to switch scenes real quick. That is not it. That's me trying to sign in to YouTube or connect it to OBS, which wasn't very successful for the most part. Because I started the stream and I was like, wait, this isn't right. And then I stopped the stream. And anyway, errors aside, we're going to jump straight in. So out of the three games I selected, the first one was not annotated. We will be doing the annotations. We will analyze someone else's game. This is between Paul Morphey and Thomas Inglis Hampton. The reason I chose Paul Morphey specifically is because a lot of the opening principles and concepts that we will try to grasp from the stream are worth highlighting, and he's a huge advocate of implementing these easy to understand concepts, and he makes it very, very visible in his play. Hello FCB, hi Ruslan, good to see you in chat. All right, so let's begin. So this game, Paul Morphey was playing with the white pieces and he started with e4, one of my favorite moves to start with. One, it controls one of the central squares in the center. Well, yes. And then, of course, puts pressure on d5. And after e5, knight f3. Another reason why I prefer e4 as opposed to d4, which I might be going back on later on when we analyze one of my games, is because it is the pawn that allows quick development of this bishop. And why is this bishop more important? It's because it is closest to where the king will be castling. And the quicker you can castle, the quicker you can start attacking. So knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to c4. And this game continued with bishop to c5 and b4. So I'm going to stop here for a second because this position has appeared many, many, many times from a beginner level to an expert level. This isn't considered purely a beginner opening at all, but it can be used right until you, I suppose, no matter how much you improve, you can still use this opening. This is not one of those stick to the London system or One of the reasons I don't prefer teaching or advocating for the London system is just because your moves in the opening don't change according to what your opponent plays. A lot of it is just autopilot. None of it is about understanding the position, but rather I understand that it's developing your pieces and allows for a very sturdy or like solid structure, but it's not going to help you better understand the game. And why I like E4 better is because it allows, well, in my opinion, for more tactical positions to occur or result, and for gambits to be played. For me, yes, the Queen's Gambit is a gambit, but not often accepted. And it's not truly a gambit, in my opinion, if the opponent gets a pawn back, or the pawn back quite quickly with like e3 or e4, bishop takes c4. But here, white plays the Evans Gambit. The Evans Gambit is rather a committal gambit given the fact that you are not guaranteed the pawn back immediately, and rather white is saying, I am going to prioritize my development over trying to gain material. And there'll be a fly joining us in today's stream, courtesy of the summer weather in Cape Town. All right, so again, gambits are basically opening material sacrifices to gain development and a quick, perhaps, attack later on in the position. So here, it forces black to react immediately. This is another thing that Paul Morphey is very famous for doing. It is forcing the opponent to make a decision based on one of his moves. Paul Morphey could have easily just played something like knight c3, telling his opponent, you can play whatever you want. You can play d6, you can play h6, you can play knight f6, you can play anything. But here he plays b4, forcing his opponent to deal with this specific matter. Because now if his opponent decides to play d6 or h6 or knight f6, he loses the bishop. So he has to play bishop takes b4, or bishop retreats to b6, to d6, to e7, or God forbid to f8. Or if he wants to be a little bit more spicy, he could even play bishop to d4. But like I said, he's forcing his opponent to make this decision. Another reason why I absolutely love gambits. Because one, I consider myself a tactical player, meaning open positions where your bishops can swing from one end of the board to the other, or you are down in material but ahead in development, allowing you the tempi to start an attack. Because if you have two more pieces developed than your opponent, they're playing two pieces behind until they get those pieces into the attack or into the center of the board, which allows you that short moment to put pressure on your opponent. And I love those kind of positions. That's why I love gambits. Right, so his opponent accepts this pawn. And why would you give up your pawn on the b file? Like I said, it's for quick development. And what is this quick development? One, he has opened this diagonal for his bishop, if he wants to go on that diagonal. Two, he allows himself this chance to play c3, d4 quickly, which again opens the bishop with tempo. And what is tempo? Tempo is again in time, in terms of moves, not time on the clock, unfortunately. Right, and black's bishop is still stuck behind these two pawns. And white already starts with the home field advantage, moving first. So any gain in tempo is really a true gain and advantage in terms of development. He has sacrificed a pawn. It always comes at a cost. Unless you're playing against someone much weaker than you are never guaranteed an advantage right from the start. So you're having to sort of sacrifice something, whether it be time for material or material for time. Otherwise, you are stuck playing an opening that is completely equal until middle game, and then you'll have to rely on middle game prowess. Right, so let's continue here, and c3 is played. This fly is going to give me a hernia. It won't. c3, bishop to c5, and castles. And once again, like I said in the beginning of the game, the reason why I'm a huge advocate for e4 being the first move is because you get to castle as quickly as possible. And when you castle and you've completed castling, I'm not saying it's always the case, because you often have to develop all your pieces before you can start attacking. But as soon as you castle, your king is safe. And if your opponent's king is not safe, you do have this opportunity to start attacking much earlier. All right, so castling makes a lot of sense here for Paul Morphey. It does give black the chance to play whatever he wants, but he has to be careful because the next move is probably going to be d4. To say to this bishop, again, you will have to move. The bishop has already moved once, twice, thrice, and will now have to move a fourth time after d4. Because let's just say black chooses to embrace his freedom here to play a move like a6, right? We've given him that freedom. You can already see the evaluation bar. I've decided to keep the evaluation bar up for you guys in case there is a complete blunder by the opponent, and you can immediately look for a tactic. And that will also remind me to pause at certain moments to let you guess. So immediately, I even have the engine up saying d4, ride or die, gotta throw in the kitchen sink. And if black captures back, now white has a castled king, 2 developed minor pieces. Black does not have a protected king, has a blocked bishop. Right now it's like a blocked nose, but worse. And white's bishop, or I suppose direct competition bishop, has open diagonals. And in addition to that, the most important thing is white controls the center. And black has to move a piece that they have already developed, which they do not want to do. All right, so a6, yes, black had his freedom for one move, but he really has to use his freedom. So is it really freedom, right? It's like, we are all free people, but are you really free if you have to pay your taxes? So he decides to play d6 with that freedom he is given, opening the light square diagonal for the bishop, and that in itself is a developing move. They often say that every pawn move is not a development move and you are running behind because you are wasting time moving pawns. But if the pawn move either controls the center or helps the development of a piece, I would say it is definitely necessary and you are allowed to play that. Okay, so after d6, I am almost bagging on the fact that now white wants to play d4. And that's what happens, white plays d4. All right, so black captures, pawn captures back, and forcing this bishop to move for the 4th time, bishop decides to go to b6. Okay, so white is in a pretty good position, controlling the center once again, king is safe, and 2 minor pieces are developed, plus an open diagonal for the bishop. But we have to also look at the potential weaknesses that white has, and we'll start with the undeveloped pieces. The bishop is undeveloped, the knight is undeveloped, the rook is undeveloped, right? Yes, our rook can come to the center, but it's still stuck on f1 for now. So that is potential weakness number 1. Underdevelopment, well, not underdevelopment, I suppose, but how to go from here. Could you develop with tempo, meaning could you attack at the same time as develop? Another potential weakness would be the sensitive pawn on d4, because it is being attacked twice. And you might say, okay, it's a weakness, but white is protecting it twice with the knight and the queen. Why is it such a big issue? And I would respond by saying that black already has a plan to play bishop to g4, pinning the knight to the queen, already attacking the 2 pieces that are defending this pawn, which makes this pawn even weaker. So let's say white plays a throwaway move here, like a3. You might even see the evaluation bar drop a little bit. Yep, there it is. Just a slight little bit. It's not a huge advantage for black. And black plays bishop to g4. And you might say, okay, but if they're attacking the pawn, can't we just move it? Or defend it again? Well, if you do defend it again, black might actually just take the knight, and then you'll be forced to either open up the king or take with the queen, and black wins a pawn. I suppose they cannot take here. Why? And the evaluation bar will go in white's favor quite quickly. you can pause the video. Yes, there is a checkmate and one move. Queen takes f7, checkmate. Right, so of course we don't want to fall for that. But the point I was trying to get across is the fact that this pawn is quite weak and we have to do something about it in order to eliminate our weaknesses, but also not waste a lot of time, because at the end of the day, black is still one pawn up. And if we equalize in development, if we give back a little bit of the center, that advantage, or rather compensation we had for the pawn, will disappear, and the evaluation bar would be -1 in black's favor. So we can't play throwaway moves like this, especially after playing a gambit. If you are playing a gambit, there is so much more that word means in chess. You are not just gambiting away a pawn. You are also giving yourself this responsibility to capitalize on that lead in development as quickly as you can. No slacking, no playing scared. You have committed and you have to follow through, or you will lose. All right, so knight c3 is what they played, or rather what Paul Morphey had decided to play. And let's try to figure out real quick, if black were to play bishop to g4, which was not played. I believe black played knight f6 instead. But what happens if bishop to g4? Let us take a look. And what I was saying earlier is a move like this wouldn't be completely ideal, just because you are blocking the diagonal of the bishop, but also allowing the knight to slide into a square like e5. Controlling the center is great, but with every pawn push, not only are you delaying your development by one move, but you are also creating a weakness, because when a pawn goes forward, you are leaving some squares behind. And the squares that were left behind here, the pawn was initially attacking c5 and attacking e5. But now, once the pawn has moved forward, it is no longer attacking c5 and e5 and has allowed the square for the knight. So we need to watch out for that. Hello everyone in chat. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, so let's go back. Knight c3 has been played. And I think another reason why Paul Morphey was not afraid of this bishop g4 move is because imagine black starts attacking without getting the king safe. I would immediately think that in a situation like this, it would be absolutely okay to attack the bishop or do something of the likes. Maybe not. Let's see. One of the recommended moves here are actually bishop to b5. So as black puts pressure on the knight protecting the pawn, white could do the same, put pressure on the knight attacking the pawn. So creating this pin on the knight. It's not the first move I would have seen, and that already will help me perhaps improve my play in future. All right, so let's go back to the position. So knight c3, and the move that was made by Thomas was knight to f6. Okay. I hope everything is good, including the volume levels. Alrighty. And e5. What a beautiful move by white. And why is e5 okay when I initially said that pushing a pawn creates weaknesses? When your opponent has not castled and you have, meaning when your king is safer than your opponent's, always try to open diagonals and files. Diagonal is already open for the bishop, putting pressure on f7. This diagonal also open for the bishop. What about the files? If we were to open up the e file and attack the king, that would be check. This king is not castled yet, so the moment white gets a chance to open up this file, they should. So these are the boxes you sort of need to tick in your head when going through your candidate moves or list of moves that you want to play. So 1, do I push the pawn? 2, do I develop the bishop instead? Is that giving my opponent too much of a chance to get the king safe? Too much of a chance to capitalize on the fact that they're up a pawn? What would this do for my development? What would this do for my attack or potential attack? And that's why e5 is another one of those, I played a gambit, I have to commit, this is a move that needs to be played. And e5 already does that, it attacks the knight. Another thing, when you play a gambit or you are down in material, avoid piece exchanges. When your king is safer than your opponent's king, avoid exchanges because you need those pieces in order to attack. If you want to play attacking chess, you will need pieces in order to attack. So here, after black captures the pawn, what does white do? What does white do? I'm going to stop here for a couple seconds, and if you are watching this stream back, try to pause it and just try to figure out what would white do in a position like this. Keep in mind what I said about exchanging pieces. If white were to exchange on e5, black would gladly take this queen. 1, they're up a pawn. 2, they're exchanging pieces because their king is unsafe. And this is exactly what black would want. So that's a little bit of a clue. So you know for a fact it's not d takes e5. What could it be? All right. So those of you watching live don't have any time to think. The move that Paul Morphey decided on is bishop a3. This is a spectacular move. Because 1, they have now just said, I'm giving you another pawn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns versus 5 pawns for white. What do they have in exchange? A safe king, fully developed minor pieces. This stops the black king from castling. Why? Because the king's going to end up on g8. Why can't you castle? The rule of chess states you cannot castle through check. So if there's a square that the king will pass through that is under attack, you cannot use it to castle. So this move gives up the pawn, but in exchange, and is being compensated by the fact that the king cannot castle. And this is going to be quite detrimental because if the king cannot castle and white has a strong attack, the king is going to face a lot of challenges. Would you rather be up a queen but about to be mated, or down a queen and about to checkmate? I would rather take the latter, thank you very much. Being up material is great, but it means nothing if your position is in trouble, right? We all know that. That's why rook sacrifices happen. That's why queen sacrifices happen. Although there is a very fine line between sacrifice and blunder, which we have to take note of here. Anyway, so the bishop is covering that diagonal. Very, very, very important diagonal. This bishop cannot go and challenge the dark squared bishop because, of course, it cannot make its way to that diagonal. And when bishop was played to b6, it already said, listen, I have committed to the queen side. I can no longer protect the king for the time being. And now white's plan is quite clear. He says, if you want a third pawn, go ahead, take it. Let's see what happens. So he didn't take the pawn. What a clever man. If he did, let's stop again. I think the evaluation gauge, or the evil bar as we call it, has given away way too much for us here. What would the move be for white? You can pause once again and take a look. The move would be, yes, rook e1. Rook e1. And the only move to defend would not be knight e7, because of course just rook takes e7, but rather bishop to e6. And what is better than capturing a piece? Yes, piling the pressure on the piece. I almost made a terrible analogy and forgot. If kids watch this, they'll probably be traumatized. Volume is good. I'm glad. All right, so knight g5. And after queen to d7, you would simply capture. You would simply capture, and bishop takes e6. And you would have to sacrifice that queen. Unfortunately, the best move is long castles, which is absolutely deranged. All right, so let's go back to the current position, which was bishop to a3, the last move that was played. And here black decided to play bishop to g4. So already seeing a spike in the evaluation bar. And it's crazy to think that the evaluation bar thinks it's 1.6 in white's favor. And why is that? Because white is 2 pawns down. How does this make sense? It's because of the position. It's very easy for, if, let's say you're watching a game and the first thing you look at is the piece imbalance. You look at the pieces that are off the board rather than the ones that are on the board. You could say, but black is 2 pawns up. Black should be winning. Why? Then you take a look at the position and you say, oof, that black king is in trouble. Black might actually have to give up some material here in order to maybe try to get the king safe, and that's exactly what black is trying to do. Play bishop to g4, queen to d7, and perhaps long castle. So it's white to move. White wants to keep the pressure or continue pressurizing the king. What does white play? Once again, we can stop and think here. Okay, so queen to b3. So Paul Morphey plays queen to b3 in this position, and in order to protect the pawn, uses this bishop, plays bishop h5. And now that the queen is no longer on the d file and is running the risk of exchanging queens, which white does not want to do, he used this as an opportunity to create a tempo, forcing black to defend. So Thomas had to find a defensive move. Moving, of course, you're not going to take the knight because of bishop takes, and there would be checkmate on the next move. Now he can capture on e5. He wanted to open this file but couldn't until now. He chose to take the pawn. He's now capturing his material back. It's exactly what he wanted to do. And of course, this is not possible because of knight takes, and you don't want to take on f3 again because of the checkmate threat. So knight to g4 was played, right? And once again, how do we pile the pressure? How do we create a lot more tension and, you know, force black to make a decision, which Paul Morphey loved to do, force his opponent to do something they do not want to do. Right, he brought one of his least active pieces into the game, which is his rooks. So either this rook or this rook. He chose the a rook, rook to d1, just because he saw potential of this rook to be on the e file later on, and queen to c8 was played. And once again, how do we continue our attack? You can just see at how harmonious white's pieces are. White's dark squared bishop is covering this diagonal. White's light squared bishop and the queen are working together, attacking f7, preventing any major developments by black. Black wants to play moves like knight a5, but is just not given this opportunity. Not given this opportunity. If we had to look, what often my coach used to say to me was try to compare a piece to its counterpart. This rook to this rook. I would say this rook is way better, right? The rook on d1. Rook f1 versus rook h8. Maybe they're equal, and they're both not doing much right now. Though I would say the rook on f1 is much better because it is actually on this side of the king, and they're connected. Connected rooks already, a big plus. My queen versus opponent's queen. I would say the white's queen is a little bit better. The knight on f3 versus the knight on g4. I'd say equal. Maybe black's knight has a bit more. White's knight is on the defense. Black's knight is on the offense. Light squared bishop, it's quite obvious. Black squared bishop, also obvious. And then, of course, the knights. I would say in total, white's pieces are better than black's pieces. Black's pieces are not really working together. What is black's pieces? What are black's pieces doing? Nothing. Okay, and once that conclusion has been come to, we can say safely that instead of bringing the rook into the game because bishop takes f7 is a huge threat, we are simply going to play e6 for white. All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for being in chat, everyone. Theory in Italian line. This was actually the Evans gambit. Yeah, Italian family for sure. All right, so +6 already, and it is just Paul Morphey's job to finish off this game. It's quite beautiful. It's always harmonious and melodic. It's just such a sweet song in our ears when games look like this and end like this, right? And after black plays f6, which is probably one of the only moves in the position, white plays this beautiful queen b5 move, putting pressure on the bishop on h5. And after bishop to g6, one more move, and black resigns. It is not a very obvious move either, though I think anyone in their right mind would resign in that position. So we'll give you one final moment to take a moment and find the move, right? So those of you watching live will get like 2 seconds. Okay, so bishop d5 was played, and white wins. The evaluation actually says mate in 16. That is wild. Wild. Bishop d5. Mate in 14. I wonder how far down it'll go. Maybe mate in 14 is the best we can do. That is very, very impressive. Okay. Well, that is the game between Paul Morphey and Thomas. It took us 31 minutes to get through. The next game I wanted to show you was the one between Aaron Nimzovich and Capablanca, Jose Raul Capablanca. And this is actually the one where Capablanca took the win. And the reason these 3 games are so different is because one of them is annotated by us, or basically we are running through the thoughts that we are coming up with, the principles that we are simply thinking about. The second game, this one, was annotated by none other than Capablanca himself. Notes by Capablanca. That's why I chose it, because it would be really nice to see the thoughts of Capablanca at the time. So he added some comments about the game, which I'll be reading through. Can't take credit for any of it. And then the game between myself and Esperanza in last year's African Individual Chess Championship. All right, I just need one moment, and then I will be right back. Give me about 2 minutes. I just want to get a refreshment, and I'll be back. So don't go anywhere. All right, I'm back. Okay. She liked it. Well, I'm glad that you finally made the stream. I saw your comments of missing the live stream, so yeah, it's good to finally have you here. All right, so we yes, all of us know who Jose Raul Capablanca is, the endgame expert. So it's quite a long game. Of course, he's not going to waste his time annotating a very short game, and Nimzovich, just as famous and renowned for his amazing middle game and end game prowess. Well, yeah, I'm glad you guys are here. Excuse me. All right, so this was an exhibition game played in Riga, Latvia in 1913. So early 1900s, more than 100 years ago, or 111 years to be exact. And you will quickly see why I chose this game. We have the four knights game Italian variation. Already we have bishop c4 and some notes after bishop c4, and it says the normal move, bishop b5, is stronger. So it says here that bishop b5 is stronger. Nimzovich must have had some new idea in mind when he chose this line, in preference to the other, which he generally adopts. Okay, so bishop c5. And here it says if bishop to b4 instead, knight e5, gives white an excellent game. All right. d3, d6, bishop g5, bishop e6. It's always nice to see someone not only analyze, but comment on the game. So, I don't know, it sort of takes you back to that moment where he did do the annotations. Obviously, computers didn't exist, so he wrote all of this out himself. Yeah. It might be too hot for coffee. The refreshment wasn't coffee. It wasn't. I was hearing my stomach make hunger noises. So I went to go get some crackers from the pantry. That is what I did. All right. So after bishop to e6, he says, with the idea of driving the queen's bishop, he's using the old notation, queen's bishop back to at the proper time by h6 and g5, and thus bringing the game to a position full of complications and unknown possibilities, where black hoped to outplay his adversary. And there he is sitting with his quill, and his ink, and he goes, adversaries. All right, so bishop b5, h6, bishop h4, and now he plays bishop to b4. And of course, this knight d4 is not available to him. All right, so to prepare against d3 to d4, okay, getting away from the attack and preventing, this is so like advanced, preventing the opponent from gaining a tempo. So it's like tempo prophylaxis. We should write a book called Tempo Prophylaxis, and only the chess players would know what it's about. To prepare against d3, d4, or before bishop takes c6, which was the intention indicated by white's bishop e5. So this is one case where they play bishop c4 to b5, so moving the bishop twice, but with a good intention, right? So after d4, which was anticipated here by white, bishop d7, preventing this fork. He didn't want to take the pawn because the knight would have been on a very good square on d4. Castle taking on c3, b takes c3. So causing a weakness here for white. It is a commitment. Once again, it's a give and take. You have your compensation. You're giving your bishop for knight. But in exchange, white has weak double pawns on the c file and an isolated pawn on the a file. And now the beautiful move he had discussed in his annotations just a couple moves earlier, g5. And he writes, there were a dozen select spectators around our table. See, this is not something you would easily be able to know just from a game of chess. One of them, Nimzovich's father. So Aaron Nimzovich's father was there, a fairly good player, and they looked at one another when they saw the bold course I was pursuing. So Aaron Nimzovich looked over to his father looked at him, and he was like, reckless on my part, they thought, and bound to bring disaster, especially after my next move. Knight takes e4, when I had not castled and my king was in the center of the board. That's exactly what we spoke about earlier. Don't start attacking unless your king is safe. But is your king really safe on a square like g8 after g5? So that is what he's going on about here. Oh, man, I have all the goosebumps. So bishop g3, and he spoiled it for us. He played knight takes e4. And bishop takes c6 now. Okay, he writes about it. He says, not the best way to continue the attack, as by exchanging pieces, the black king will not be submitted to the strong attack that would be necessary to compensate for the material advantage obtained by black, and the disarrangement of white's queenside pawns. That is a very, very long sentence. But basically, in summary, what he's saying is what we discussed in the game before. When you are attacking, you want to avoid exchanges because you need those pieces in order to attack. And that's why he pointed out that his opponent was at fault here, that he should not have traded. Queen d3, apparently, was the best move to keep up the pressure. He says, to say such a thing with such confidence, knowing that no engines exist, other than sitting at the board and analyzing it, saying Queen d3 was better. No Fritz, no Ribka, no Deep Blue, no Alpha Zero, nothing, no Stockfish. Amazing. I'm in awe. All right, so bishop takes c6 happened, d takes e5, and this was his approach probably at trying to gain back the material that was lost. D takes e5 and bishop takes. Not even exchanging the queen. Some people have suggested knight takes e5. It has its good and bad points. But at all events, black will come out with a better game in any variation. Ooh la la. And queen takes d1. If you have a weak king, why not exchange queens, right? Rook a takes d1. And now a beautiful move by black. I will wait for you guys to find it real quick. Not something I would have easily seen, but he writes about it. He gives himself a very big exclamation mark. So maybe great move? What's one exclamation? And a brilliant move is 2. But of course, white is attacking the rook on h8 and the pawn on c7. So you have to do something about it. And he finds f6. The key is to maneuver in this variation. I had counted on it together with king f7 when I played g5. He saw all of this. Amazing. And bishop to d4. I love that he told the story, like storytelling during a chess game that is not just about the game itself or variations is my favorite. That's why I love the book Bobby Fischer's 60 Memorable Games, because it tells stories about the game. All right, bishop d4. Bishop takes c7, which is what we spoke about, would leave the c-file open for the black rooks to act against white c-pawns. My opponent must have thought that on account of the bishops of opposite colors, he had a safe game. Okay. So at least he thought, okay, he had secured a draw. Material is equal. And king f7. Now black king is much more useful than white's. He called the white king useless in a castle position. Okay, fair enough. It is an endgame. Kings belong in the center. Okay, rook h to e8, activating the pieces. And he says, Notwithstanding the bishops of opposite color, I did not hesitate to exchange. Those who wish to learn should do well in carefully studying this game. Okay, so those who wish to learn should do well in carefully studying this game. It is one of the finest endings I ever played, and have had very often the great pleasure of hearing my opponent pay tribute to the skill I displayed by me in winning it. Wow, so not only does he call it one of his best endgames, but his opponent also said it was one of his best endgames, or one of the best, maybe, endgames ever played. F3, captures, rook takes, and I'm assuming here, using the imbalance of opposite color bishops in addition to white's weak pawns, the rule of thumb is as follows. Opposite color bishops in an equal endgame often leads to a draw. Opposite color bishops in a game where one side has a pawn up, or 2 pawns up or more, it is better for them. Okay, so rook a to d8, activating both rooks, g4, locking pawns on dark squares, bishop b5, rook to b1, and bishop a6. The reason he wouldn't defend is because of c4 probably. And if you take, you get rid of a weak pawn, and white gains the b7 pawn, and these pawns are very strong because they are linked, or they're connected, and rook a to d1. Not king f2 because of c5. c5? Let's take a look. Oh, right, of course. So king f2, c5. I saw that the rooks weren't doubled yet. Okay. Wait. Oh, because takes, and rook e2. Very beautiful. Okay. Winning a piece. Okay. Quickly. Right, rook e2, takes. Is he picking up f3? Rook e1, takes on f3, rook f1, c5. c5, the move that gives black the advantage. So bishop takes f6 now. If rook takes f3 instead, c takes d4, rook d3, and rook c8. Because if rook takes, then you take the pawn. If pawn takes, you take the pawn. Okay. And for all practical purposes, black is a pawn ahead. My opponent chose the other line of play in order to keep bishops of opposite colors, which he thought should give him a draw. Okay, interesting. I'm not live on Twitch right now. This is just a YouTube stream. Welcome, everyone. So bishop takes f6, rook d1. Oh, rook d1 is spicy. And the bishop moves. He captures, knowing that this is opposite color bishops. Material is still equal, but he picks the pawn up on c2 and g4. Okay, wait. Why didn't he go for the pawn on c2? Now. Okay, he attacks the bishop first. a5? Somebody explain. Because don't you lose the pawn to bishop c7? So it says here after bishop e8. It would seem that probably I had, or would seem that had white played bishop g7 and then followed with a4, a5, he could have drawn, but such is not the case, as h5, a5, a6 would have won, though taking much longer. So a5 instead. King e1. White cannot attack the pawn by bishop c7, as b5 wins. Oh, no way! So bishop c7 and b5. What? Oh, wow. Wait. Can't you take? Take. And then here? Why is this winning? a3, bishop c3, a2, king e1, h5. Oh, okay, that's way too advanced for me. So king e1 instead, king d5, king d2, and bishop back, picking up the pawn. King c6. Oh, nice move, because if now bishop takes a5, you know what happens? What happens? Right, b6. Okay, so bishop d8, b6, and c4. Black picks up another pawn, and now we see 2 pawns up is enough, even though there is opposite color bishops. And now it's just a matter of maneuvering. I wonder if he had written much else. No, he hadn't. Okay, so the next move is very important by black. What is the move? I'll leave it quickly. Right. Bishop takes c4. If white now plays king takes c4, then a2, bishop e5, h4. As one of the 2 rook pawns or queen. Right. So he's saying that if you take and push the pawn, then the bishop will be overloaded because of h4, b3, and so on. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. King a3, b5, c3. Now I have to be careful, don't trade too many pawns. Okay, this is cool. Great maneuvering, look at that. That is so suave. Gotta create a passed pawn. And once the bishop is tied down to the protection of the b2 square, now you start with h4. Wow. Look at that. Hang on, what's the move here? Okay, apparently h3 is stronger, but this still wins. Takes h3. And it's over. It is over. King goes in. So beautiful. Look at that. And the reason why you can play this is because if bishop takes, king takes, the square is a white square. If it was a black square, it would be a complete draw because a light squared bishop trying to promote a flank pawn on the opposite color is a draw. You liked my rap video? I'm so glad. So there was one game left that I wanted to show you. I will probably run through it quite quickly. It is a 19-move game. I didn't want to go longer than an hour, so we'll probably cut it off there. But yeah, this game was played in the African Individual Chess Championship last year, 2023. And this was the final game. I just lost the game before this, which I felt costed me a podium spot. So I just wanted to give it my all. I wanted to end off strong. At least I was sitting on a plus score in terms of rating, so I wasn't leaving empty-handed. And winning this game also got me 5th place. But I think you understand the disappointment of performing at a level that you sort of expect yourself to do a lot better. So in hindsight, I was very happy with my performance, but I think during the event I was rather disappointed. But going into the last round angry at myself, I was only, guaranteed to play the best chess. It wasn't going to let me perform poorly. I usually play better when I'm angry. I want to beat my opponent. So this is very counter to what we've been going through this entire stream, but I did say you are going to be quite disappointed in seeing that the first move is d4. And my reasoning is just because I wanted to throw my opponent off a little bit. After knight f6, knight f3, d5, bishop g5. And we have the Tory attack, knight to e4, bishop comes back, and I really try to use the principles of, gaining tempo, developing my pieces quickly, creating some sort of attack. I even planned on castling on the opposite side. Here I wanted to play f3. I think my opponent knew that. and decided to exchange on d2. Already I have 1, 2, 3 pieces developed, and my opponent only has 1 piece developed. So I already felt like this was a lot better for me. I was also controlling the center quite well, and my king was about to castle. So after e6, I played a g4. Of course, I could have castled immediately, but there's no harm in gaining some space on the king side first. Queen to b6, and of course I'm going to long castle. It protects the pawn. It looks a little bit scary because the queen is right there. But in all honesty, what's even scarier is the pawns being advanced, and the queen is blocking the pawn, which gives me time to castle and actually gain more space on the king side. And we have a moderator in chat. I didn't even know I had moderators in chat. I'll probably just appoint all of the moderators from Twitch as YouTube mods as well. It looks like you're the only mod for now. Okay, a5, but it's not quick enough, unfortunately, and I just went ahead with g5, knight d7. And already it's looking a little bit better for me. I had some plans on, I mean, this is exactly the same position, or not the same, I suppose, but a very similar position to what we saw in the first game, Paul Morphey versus Thomas, where the premise was that when your king is safe and your opponent's king is not safe, open diagonals and open files. And that's exactly what I did. I opened the file. I played e4. Right, e4, and knight takes e5, trying to trade, which is a knee-jerk reaction to anyone attacking you. You want to trade as quickly as possible. But here I just took with the bishop. No harm, no foul. Same plan. Black is still a couple moves away from castling this time. Instead of preventing the castling and cutting off this diagonal, I've prevented this bishop from moving because now I'm threatening bishop takes g7. So after a4, a3, just, put a complete stop to the attack. Queen a5, again, I'm putting pressure on my opponent. All my opponent wants to do is trade pieces. I'm not going to allow the queen trade. And now I'm threatening something quite big. Bishop c7. Okay. So b5, bishop c7 anyway, queen a7. And of course, gonna open the file the moment I can. Pawn takes, and white to move. Excuse me. White to move. I will give you guys a little bit of time in this position, maybe like 5 seconds. Those of you watching the stream after it's live, you can pause real quick. Right, rook e1. And better yet, my opponent responded with bishop e7. And now it says, I think it gives it away, mate in 3. Can you find the mate in 3? Yes, can you find the mate in 3, everyone? Correct. Rook takes e7. King takes e7. That's one move. Queen d6. King e8 and queen d8. And that's really, really satisfying because we used a lot of the elements that we learned in the beginning. Control the center, get the king safe, being up in, not material, being up in development. I suppose this time it was up in development without having to lose out on material like gambiting a pawn, which is just that much better. And then, of course, when your king is safe and your opponent's king is not safe, open the file as quickly as possible. And diagonals, but of course we did what we could with what we had there. And yeah, I just thought I'd try to find a game as quick, well, as close to implementing those sort of things as possible. I wanted to look for a game I played in 2021 at the same event, African Individuals, but somehow the event doesn't exist online, so I have to go back and look for my notation. And this is another reason why you should analyze your games. You should create a little bit of a database of all your games, because you can go back and see if you've played that opening before. My memory is good when it comes to chess, I can remember my games quite well. My memory regarding everything else is horrible. But as I'm getting older, and yes, my birthday's on Sunday, I feel like these games are starting to fade in my memory. My memory's gotten a lot worse. I mean, I am only 26, turning 27, but I can already see the effects. Like a lot of the games that I played, I can remember vaguely, and I used to remember a lot more about them. And that's why it's so important to save your games and to analyze them. But that is the secret, and I know that a lot of grandmasters suggest this. The reason I decided to tackle this topic today is because I'm doing a lot of chess dojo tasks, and one of those tasks is to annotate a game, and it speaks about the importance of annotating your games. And it was recommended by Jesse Cry himself, who is a grandmaster. And you can't go wrong when someone is playing at a level you want to play at. You got to listen to them, and he's a brilliant coach. And I can tell also an amazing player. I haven't seen a lot of his games, though I do want to look at those at some point too. But thank you everyone for being here. It was a lot of fun. This is what I love to do. And why coach one-on-one when I can do streams like this, where everyone can benefit and we can talk in real time. So this is what I've always wanted, and I'm glad that we finally get a chance to do it. I will be seeing you again on Sunday on Twitch for my birthday stream. So hope to see you there, and have a fantastic Friday further. See you soon.